Robschild, no investment advice. Welcome to the show where we view financial markets using Ben Graham's investment philosophy, macro, technicals, and of course a touch of crystal ball gazing. Today is Friday, January 17th, 2025. Today's episode begins with just bringing up that there is the inauguration on Monday of the new U.S. President, Donald Trump. The news is saying that he has 100 executive orders ready to sign on day one or within the first few days. Some of this includes tariffs. Obviously, this has a lot of market implications, and so the way I feel as a market participant is like the kid on the bus with Napoleon Dynamite looking at him and being like, so what are you going to do to get today, Mr. Trump? Whatever I feel like, gosh, right? Yeah, it sort of feels like that because we have been getting mixed messages, as far as like how things are going to be handled. And it's a mess. It's a messy situation to be in. And your everyday person isn't really going to understand the ins and outs of it, but there's some major problems going on. The U.S. has way too much debt, and we can't keep going on the same path that we're on. Fed Jerome Powell has stated this very clearly. We all know that we can't just increase our debt infinitely forever. It's just bad. It leads to perhaps the end of the U.S. dollar if that were to occur. And well, yeah, maybe that is the path we're headed down. I don't think that the new world reserve currency will be Bitcoin. Maybe it will be. We'll see. Anyway, with the inauguration Monday, a lot of markets are, the way I like to describe markets going into situations like this where there's humongous unknowns is like finding their middle ground. And so that's what markets essentially did for me today. They kind of got to a midpoint that like anything could really go anywhere from here. But we had some interesting charts today. The other thing for today's episode, main thing is that Monday markets are closed for Dr. Martin Luther King's day. Seeing as though the inauguration day is the same day as the markets being closed, Tuesday should be very interesting. Whatever news comes out Monday of things that he signs, and the market will have time to like not have a shock reaction to it. We'll be able to like think about it before we decide what we're going to do by the time Tuesday comes. But yeah, certainly next week should be interesting any which way you look at it. No major changes in the daily reminders. Watch macro update 110.25 with the dominoes and the ball to hear me read through and explain what I think are the most important macro viewpoints going on in markets. Also, no major changes in the crystal ball readings nor the Robschild portfolio, which I also explain in my macro update show. Diving straight into the charts, the S&P 500, we popped up out of this wedge, and so officially that adds a bullish case to the S&P 500. However, for it to have a much higher probability, we want to see a closing candle above this candle. Notably, today's candle was a doji, so a tiny little candle. So open and closed right around the same spot. There's a big fight here, and a lot of times dojis can act as reversal candles. And so, like I said at the beginning of the show, the markets are prepared for anything to happen next week. The 10-year note yield not dropping, opening lower and then closing actually a tiny bit higher than yesterday's close. Agreeing to disagree. I had said previously with this pattern, it looked like it wanted to continue up to 5%, which would be a double top on this, and like an exact double top and a highly psychological level. And we never got there, and it looks to me like we're more likely headed still down to this line just based on the chart pattern. But again, with next week being such a big event. Really, we should think of us in a situation where anything can happen. I mentioned on yesterday's show oil looking like a blow off top, and we definitely did have a continuation of yesterday's move to the downside. Many professional traders out there understand that part of what Trump is likely to do, based on everything he's said, is increase U.S. oil production by getting rid of some restrictions and deregulating some things, and that should have a pretty strong headwind on the price of crude oil. And so it's highly expected for that reason for oil to really cool off here. But we'll see. We don't know. We can't predict the future. No, nobody has a crystal ball. KWEB, my favorite ETF of Chinese stocks, because this holds like Amazon, Facebook, the Chinese versions of all of these, Baidu, JD, Alibaba, etc. Yeah, so in order for this market, it wants to get bullish here. It wants to go up, and it needs some evidence. I guess the vice president of China is going to be at Trump's inauguration, and so, and if you remember Trump's last presidency, he'd always talked out of two sides of his mouth. He'd always complain about China, and then he'd meet President Xi, and and says he's friends with China, and so it's a complicated relationship. And at the end of the day, the way I look at it is, Trump's at the end of it all is a businessman, and that's it. He wants to get down to business. He wants business to be good. He's a business guy. He doesn't. He's not going to bend the knee to any particular political ideology outside of business being good. Let's make business good. And that gives me actually a little bit of hope for maybe, world economies having a little bit of a tailwind in that respect. Where we are in the business cycle, unfortunately, I think things are going to fall apart no matter what we do. But if you have to have equities, as I feel it's important to always have some equities, as Benjamin Graham says in Security Analysis, never have less than 25% in equities, which is what I have, about 25% in equities. And from my perspective, if I'm going to own something, why not own something that's clearly cheap, clearly a great opportunity? And this is one of those things. So anyway, so so China went up 3% today, this KWEB fund, which has been kind of all over the place lately, but I find a more fair, more reasonable valuation would be in the $50 range of this fund particularly. Dr. Copper, with a PhD in economics, finally breaking to the downside. I have been talking about on the show, the dollar goes up, the dollar goes down, the yields going up, like gold, everything's going in different places, and copper is just marching higher and higher and higher, just ignoring everything that's going on. Kind of hilarious. And then finally today we had a little bit of a break in copper. I'm going to add to this, I watch a chartist named, his name is Ira Epstein. He has a YouTube channel who does daily shows. His charting helps me understand some charting things, but the bigger takeaways from him is that he's been in this business longer than almost anybody out there that talks about this stuff. He's like in his 80s. I think he's been like a professional in the finance world for like 50 years. So he's seen everything twice, and he couldn't figure out why copper kept going up. I was trying to figure it out too. He mentioned this yesterday, actually. So anyway, copper finally taking a breather, and I don't know why, but if he has a PhD in economics, maybe he's I don't know. I have no idea what's going on here. Based on macro data where I see employment, the 3-month, 10-year, initial, the leading indicators, everything is saying we're headed into a slowdown. So it's not going to surprise me at all if copper really collapses in the near future. But, that's just me and my crystal ball. Gold, interestingly, continuing higher to break out of this pattern. Just an inside day. Gold still looks bullish. With gold going up and also the 10-year note yield having gone up so much, it's almost like the market, waiting to see this new administration, what they're going to do, and kind of testing it, testing the new administration coming in, saying, hey, we're we're going to wait to see what you decide to do before we decide what we're going to do, kind of just like, we can't let yields be too low if you're going to decide to, spend enormous amounts of money and make the debt situation even worse. And then, well, anyway, I digress. The triple Qs caught my eye today, the NASDAQ, just because I'm seeing such an incredibly clear pattern here now. This is very clearly a bull flag, and so it clearly wants, when you go up and then you have a flag channel, the typical thing to do is to break to the upside and go higher. So, this is why you always, even if you are right in the future, Mr. Market and his prices, you can't stop other people from bidding prices higher and higher, unless you take all their money away, unless they run out of money, which may happen sooner than anybody else thinks. You look at savings and all that stuff. I follow a lot of people discussing that kind of thing. Last chart of the day, Bitcoin popping out of this little wedge higher. So I talked about yesterday, how long are we going to stay in here? And you know what? I lost money on my short, but I didn't lose that much money. I can gleefully be glad that I got out of my short when I did, when I see it pop out of this pattern right here. It's obviously wanting to reach to the most previous high at, what is this? 108,364. And so if we had a closing candle day above that level, that would be very bullish for Bitcoin. And I believe chartists are saying the next probable stopping level is around the 115,000 area. I'm just a little crystal ball reading into all of this. I think that people are overly excited about Bitcoin. I mean, I think very strongly in general people are overly excited about Bitcoin in a lot of ways, but in particular in regard to the Trump administration supposedly being friendly to crypto. Does the U.S. really want a deflationary currency taking over the global reserve currency status? No, I don't think so. It would be in the best interest of governments themselves to make, I hate to say it, but really potentially to make crypto illegal. I mean, I'm wondering if this whole crypto thing will eventually lead into major, worldwide instability. I don't know. I'll have to do a fire ball for my thumbnail for this video. And that's all from me and my crystal ball. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support. And see you next time. Robschild.